Давайте я немножечко представлю Сюзан, пока он там берет себе микрофон. Значит, смотрите, есть замечательная, соответственно, компания консалтинговая в Германии, базируется в Гамбурге, называется Flow Hamburg. И у нас, соответственно, есть два человека, сооснователи этой компании. Здесь в зале Андреас, который завтра будет вести воркшоп, вон он помахал рукой, и, соответственно, Сюзан. Я их знаю очень давно. С Сюзан познакомился, когда аккредитовывался на Kanban тренера, а с Андреасом мы проходили вместе, даже и Сюзан потом мастер-класс Enterprise Services Planning. То есть кто-то, если из вас еще слышал про такие конференции, как бы про Kanban метод, который называется Flow Days, это, соответственно, все пошло от них. Вот, то есть, можно так сказать, инвенторы этого дела. Ну и плюс Сюзан еще является куратором учебных программ Kanban университета. То есть не последний человек, который приложил руку к тем программам, по которым вы обучались. Сюзан, let's start.
Спасибо. Okay. I hope you all can hear me well. I grew up in Eastern Germany, in Dresden, so I will try to start with a little bit of Russian. We'll see how this goes, but then I'll switch to English, okay? So I want to start with a simple question. Kanban, что это? Any idea? Can you shout anything at me? Maybe in English, that would help. What is Kanban? Okay, start from where you are. Okay, cool. Manage work and improve lifestyle. Mindset. Okay, lots of educated people in here. Great. Okay, let's start very simple. Something that you might have heard, and I hear this very often. Stickeri na stenie. Stickers on a wall. You know, this is also unfortunately where a lot of Kanban implementations end. Okay, what else? Что-то, чтобы помочь организовать работу. That's what you said, right? Something that helps you manage your work. Okay. Что-то, чтобы помочь предоставить лучший сервис. Okay, something that helps you improve the service that you run. And lastly, instrument развития компании. You know, that's something that even helps you improve and develop your whole organization. So I think all of this is correct, right? Все правильно? And you can see all of this in real life. So Kanban comes in a lot of different flavors, and you might have seen this. So with all of this, so how do you do Kanban? What does it mean to do Kanban? What do we do? Make a board. Yes, that's good. So that's what it says in a bit more fancy terms. Yeah, so we have a look at how we work. So we had this evolutionary change thing over there. And then we build a Kanban system, of course, that consists of a board and our tickets, cadence, everything, and stuff we measure. And then we apply our Kanban practices and principles, and hopefully we get some positive effect out of it. Okay? So which factors determine your Kanban? You know, Kanban systems come in more or less fancy ways. So what determines how your Kanban will be like? What factors are there? Any idea? What limits maybe and what helps your Kanban? Pre-educated. Yeah, that's the last one. So what do you mean by maturity? Yeah. So let's start a bit simpler. So, but we'll get to this. That's the last point, actually. So, because what determines like which practices we can apply, first depends on like what scope of work do we cover. context. It could be like a personal Kanban, or it could be Kanban for a team, or for a department or whole organization. So there can be different scopes for your Kanban. And as many of you know, you can have different Kanban systems at different levels that interact. And then, of course, the purpose. What do you want to achieve? Yeah. So you want to maybe get out of overburdening first, or you really want to improve or even reinvent your business. So that also determines how your system can and will look like. And then, of course, what's the level of Kanban knowledge in the organization? It's none yet. That's something that we found, It really helps to educate people. I don't know about Russia, but in Germany there's still lots of Kanban myths around, and people have crazy ideas about Kanban. So it really helps to get some education and help people understand what Kanban is. Doing training, workshops, and simulations. And then lastly, it was the maturity thing over there, what values are held in the organization? What's our culture? Cultura. And all of this limits or supports your Kanban system, how deep you can go with the maturity. Okay? So with all of that, Kanban, systems come in different flavors. So what? We have our Kanban system. What happens if you work with it? Okay? So we can have different impacts. What will change if we do Kanban? So at the first level, maybe we get things done better, quicker, and we get out of overburdening. That's often the starting point in many organizations. People have too much work, and they're just totally in the hamster wheel. And this could be a first impact getting out of that. Then, maybe we get this increasing awareness, there's a customer out there that actually consumes our services, and we want to have an improved orientation towards this. And this usually comes with an improvement of the end-to-end flow. So not just limited to one team, but really like everyone collaborating to deliver this service. And then, fantastic, predictable delivery of your service. So imagine a customer requests something, and you're in a good position to tell them when you will be able to deliver in good quality. And then lastly, imagine you can even anticipate demand, not just respond predictably, but even anticipate what customers might request, and proactively maybe tune your organization and your service delivery up to ensuring long-time survival of the company. So these are all different impacts and different positive outcomes or benefits that you can get with Kanban. So you just heard a lot of factors and things in the air. So the good thing is you have the Kanban Maturity Model. That's like a playbook that helps you navigate all of these. So you can use it as a coach or an internal change agent to really have a targeted or focused development journey in your Kanban implementation. So who of you does know the Kanban Maturity Model? Quick show of hands. Okay. I'll give you a 2-minute summary. I heard that there are posters next door, and happy to have a further chat later on. So just that you have a rough idea what this thing is about. So you see here the 3 main components. So the first is culture. So we have a look at which values are held in the organization. And often a good thing is to observe the worst accepted behavior. So what can people do in the company and they get along with it? Okay? Tells you something about the culture. Then, of course, implemented Kanban practices. This is relatively easy and straightforward. And they're all on the poster, and you can observe them relatively easily. And then most importantly, the outcomes. And it's important to understand the KMM is not a checklist of practices, but it's about outcomes. Because the culture and the practices together, they will determine which outcomes you can have. And that's the slide we had before the playbook with the different levels of impact. So these are the components. And here are the levels. 0 to 6. I haven't even seen a level 3 organization yet, so I wouldn't worry too much about like the violet shades here. So most of the organizations are like in the yellow to orangish area. Okay. So here is a bit more elaborate version of it. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay. So at level 0, up there, oops, not working. Okay. It's basically everyone's just trying to survive individually in the organization. At level 1, others can see what others should do or are doing, and you have an improved collaboration, for instance, within a team. That's level 1. No. Okay. And then at level 2, this is where we have an increasing customer awareness. We're not maybe fully customer driven yet, but we focus on the end-to-end flow. So from placing a request until delivering it to the customers. So which means we can catch all these drop balls, between departments, between teams that we often see. And it should really, so at the very latest at this level, the customer should notice that something is going on and things are improving from the customer's perspective. So at level 1, it's more like more happy teams. And at 2, customers should be happier too. Okay, that was KMM in 2 minutes. I brought you 2 examples from practical application of the KMM. One of them, it started already at the end of 2018. It was actually one of the beta clients or beta cases for the KMM. It was one of our long-term clients, logistics. And their project team, in a wider logistics enterprise. And they have today a multi-level Kanban system with 8 teams. At the beginning, were like 4 or so. And they have 3 locations across Europe. And initially, they had a plateau after this initial growth period. And that's when we started with the KMM appraisal. At the moment, the product is rolled out now, and more customers are being migrated onto the platform. So, of course, things change again, and new challenges are ahead. And we're still working on how to make them fit for purpose. Okay, so let's have a look. So this was the initial cultural appraisal in January 19, more than a year ago now. You see maturity level 1 and 2, the values. So they really appreciated transparency. No one was hiding stuff. But other than this, there was no real collaboration. And this is across teams. Of course, they were collaborating within the teams, so they had pretty strong teams, but not across the teams. So here, the level that we placed the KMM on was cross-team, so overall. Also with evolutionary change, they were like semi-successful. They were good at starting things, but not good at following through. And leadership didn't act really in a very helpful manner to drive things forward. Okay, so just a few examples. So here you can find, okay. Here you can find the different levels, the different maturity levels. From 2 to 3, 1 to 3. And you see like green is fully practiced, yellow, partly, red, not at all. And what you can see here is already crazy mix, right? Because initially people think like, oh, we'll have a nice green band and then a yellow and then a red. But in practice, it's always messy. It's totally mixed, right? So zoom in there for level 2. So reality is really not as linear as the model. And that's what we've seen in all the cases so far, that you will always have maybe some level 1 practices and then no 2, but then suddenly a level 3 or even 4 practices also there. Same with culture. So you can, but you'll still get a picture like what's the predominant level that they're pretty stable on. So in that case, the Kanban practices, they were like between levels 2 and 3. And you saw the culture was still in like 1, maybe transitioning to 2. So there's a gap there, right? And for coaching, this means a lot of work. So this is one of the modes we call overreaching. So they're more advanced with their Kanban practices than with the culture. And you can imagine that leads to friction and issues in the organization. And we as coaches, we notice like, why doesn't it stick? Why don't they do it? It's a fantastic practice. Why? And then all of this, of course, limits business outcomes. So it's really important to notice that you're overreaching. And a lot of us Kanban enthusiasts, including me, we're always fired up and excited about stuff. And then we throw it onto customers and they're totally overwhelmed. So no, don't do this, okay? So what we decided to do, so we had a meeting with the leadership team and we said, okay, we understood. They were a bit disappointed, I think, with the level 1 thing in the culture. But hey, it's one of these big organization enterprises, and the surrounding culture, of course, impacts your little agile island, right? But they said, yes, we will put more focus on leadership things. So we as coaches, we had the okay to work with leadership team and on cross-team aspects. So not just work within the teams, but across teams. And we said, okay, let's take it slow. Let's consolidate at Kanban Maturity Level 2 practices. You see it there, like focusing on then culture, also on collaboration and flow across the teams. That was in like February 19. And then, not a lot happened. We had a few discussions. We were moving slowly. But then in April, we had a little bit of a crisis. And those of you who attended maybe master classes or have heard this, never waste a good crisis. As a coach, it might give you an opportunity to do a bigger change leap in such a situation. When everything's in turmoil anyway, just, you can apply change anyways. So the situation was there that they didn't deliver any feature for 3 weeks, but the forecast said 2 to 3 a week. So the alarm bells went off. And we had a closer look, and there were actually more than 20 features in progress. So these are the big things like epics. And each of them had around 10 stories. So, across, I think at that point it was 6 or 7 teams, we had like 200 user stories kind of somewhere in the system. So they really found, oh crap, teams are blocking each other. And how can we finish these features quicker now? We need to get our WIP under control. And with WIP, they meant the overall WIP, not within the teams, but across teams. So we agreed, it was kind of good because, that's like typical classic Kanban thing. And of course, we had the answers, right? You kind of know what to do. And this gave us a great opportunity to try implementing these practices. So we agreed to visualize the end-to-end workflow. Anyway, so we use Jira. So we decided to do also the end-to-end flow in Jira to set up a board there so that we get the overall view, even if it's not beautiful. And so we introduced there the workflow level Kanban, so an overarching Kanban system that also the product owners really were actively using. And we said, okay, folks, we need to manage the dependencies across the teams. And we introduced these team capacity tokens. We might have a little look at this tomorrow at the end of the capacity allocation workshop. If you want to know more about this, let me know. It's a technique pioneered from Patrick Steyert, where you basically have tokens in the teams that signal capacity, and you can only start a new feature if all the teams involved signal that they have capacity available. Okay, so this is what we implemented. And all of this also catalyzed a lot of discussions about shared code ownership. Because so far, the 7 teams, they were sitting on their own business verticals. And they had clear ownership, and it had worked so far, but now demand was shifting, and things got really messy. So all of this drove a lot of shared code ownership discussions on the technical side. The impact was pain. It was really painful. It brought a lot of stress in the organization because it brought up all the issues that were there before, but now were surfaced. Like, teams had been starving for quite some time. So with starving, we mean they didn't have, the proper things to implement at the right time. But this was always hidden because they just started working on something else. Okay? They just found their own work. It became clear that demand patterns had changed because shortly before this, the platform went live and they had the first customers migrated. And then suddenly, you had different hotspots of functionality that you needed to implement in the different releases. And it wasn't spread evenly across the teams who were really sitting on like workflow components. And as I said, the uneven workload became clear and everyone understood, so, ooh, crap, we have way more dependencies than we expected. Because they thought like majority of the features could still be developed by maybe 1 or 2 teams, but we found a lot of features that were actually developed by like 3 teams or even more. Okay. So all of this enforced cross-team collaboration across the verticals. It led to a lot of communication, discussion, and initially, yes, it was stressful, also for the product owners, because some issues became clear, but also for the teams who had to move out of their comfort zone. So the journey so far, just quick summary, we started at the beginning of 2019, and then in April we had this little crisis, and then we implemented the changes, and in 2019, in June, we had first effects showing of the stresses. So let's have a look. So this is January again. Now watch closely. It moves into June. So you see a bit more, or a lot more green and yellow on the map now. The only things in red are actually stuff like blocker clustering, which we do implement now. But everything else, level 2, was in place at that time. Culturally, things are really starting to look much better. That's January. It's June. So collaboration really improved. We were able to really go through with changes. We had some good acts of leadership by the management team, or the leadership team. And we were even going into maturity level 2 there. Interesting thing to note about the respect. So that's, of course, they had respect for like humans, but respect here also means not overcommitting, not pushing too much work into the system, which they always did. Like every release started as a death march, and they were always overcommitment, and that's why respect was still mostly red there. Okay. So the journey continued after this, and you can see this little fiber thing there. Things got really rocky. So like towards the end of last year, we had, the empire striking back. So there were forces from the surrounding, from the rest of the organizations, from very high up, like making verdicts or saying you have to do this or that, or to commit to this and that. And we felt that we were regressing back to maturity level 1. So values. At this time, I think we coaches, we were quite concerned what's happening. And we mirrored this actually to the leadership team, who I think they appreciated this. So this led us where we are today, because we had this discussion again. So like, here's the model, and where do you think you need to be? So what became clear, we need predictability. Because imagine, you look this big logistics enterprise, and you will onboard customers like other businesses onto your platform. And of course, you have to give them a date. Like, on April 13th, we will onboard you to the system, which means they can do the training and everything needed. So we need predictability. And also, of course, forecasting capabilities for a bit more longer-term planning and short time to market, being able to respond to additional needs. So what do you think of these 3 levels? Which one would be the appropriate? Thank you. Yeah, 10 minutes, so I'll speed up. That's level 3. That's fitness for purpose. That's what we mean. Okay. And they said, okay. And so that's what we've seen also in the last week happening a lot. They really understood this. And they articulated this clearly to the teams, like, we expect you. We need to reduce lead time. This is important because da-da-da. So I think that's a good step forward. So overall achievements so far, looking back like a year and a half, we really have improved collaboration across the teams, or the teams have improved collaboration and communication. We have a stable cadence now, so twice a week they meet and discuss cross-team, like a cross-team Kanban meeting. Dependencies are managed way better. Just last week I had a moment where I thought like, yeah, like liquidity really improved across the teams, meaning you have a feature to implement, like who can do it? Because a year ago, there was exactly one team who could do it. And now there's always options being discussed, which is good. And we lately introduced classes of service, like they have things already promised or sold to customers at a certain date that's communicated, and they have flexible things and then technical intangibles. And we introduced this, and it became clear that they have like 120% communicated. So the constant overcommitment becomes pretty clear at the moment, and that's the thing we're working on next. So currently, as I mentioned, we're doing blockers, whip aging, trying to get a real pull across the teams, and still working the starvation issue. So more forward-looking way also by the product owner team to avoid starvation in the teams. And we're reassessing the maturity levels across the teams and organization, and we have the mandate to go to coach them to level 3. How long this might take, we'll see. So here you see the little screenshot of that's actually Tableau put on Jira. So a lot of work was put into this because Jira is just not a maturity level 3 tool in such a setting. It's just the wrong tool. We're working on that. Meanwhile, we put on like this Tableau thing on top of Jira, and you see like whip aging, thresholds. There's like issues per week left, and also which percentage of the 85th percentile of the lead time is gone already. It's like, how are we doing? And there you see also the number of stories per feature and their status over there. Clicker's not working. Okay. Whoopsie. Over there, you also see these capacity tokens by the teams. So they have a constantly, so twice a week, they have a look at this and review and have discussions. Okay. So the journey continues. Still a bumpy ride, and looking just at the timeline, in these big corporations, change is slow, and you need patience as a coach. Definitely something also I learned. But at the moment, we're pretty hopeful that we're on a good trajectory and to make further progress there. So how did the KMM help there? We really, I personally initially use it as a sense-making tool. So, bring structure into the mess and really have a look like what's going on, and then use it as guidance for coaching and see really, what are we doing here and where are we? And what we found, and it's a great tip, it's a fantastic tool to get in touch with management, which I think we found out it's a good success factor for Kanban, involve management, and you have a much, you might have different impact. Okay. Second example, much quicker, media, advertising, company, lots of reorg, and the leadership wanted to have some guidance. What can we do next? You see here, very different picture. Culture, level 2, solid. Kanban adoption, level 1. As a coach, this is so easy now, because you can just take the KMM as a playbook. So here we have the culture further than the Kanban practices. And you can tell them, look, that's the poster. And let's just go level by level and start with the transitioning practices. For instance, here, level 1, let's see if we have them all in place and go consolidating. And then start level 2 with the transitioning practices. These are ones that you can push rather safely as coaches. And the hope is that they pull the consolidating practices. So you could use the KMM there as the playbook. Really easy. So really as a guide, we all have ideas what we could do, but it helps you to align your changes and maybe say, no, these are maybe not, it's not the right time for some of them. Okay. So things to keep in mind. Kanban of the year. That's not what the KMM is for, right? It's not to have the most fantastic, beautiful Kanban system on the planet. And it's also not a checklist, right? It's not a checklist of practices. So, no, niet. Okay, please don't use it in that way. But what is really helpful, use it as a roadmap to implement the right practices at the right time and focus on the business outcome. This really makes a difference also in your organization. Like also Andreas is really good at this, talking to management and asking them, what do you want to achieve with this initiative? how do you know your business is more successful with this Kanban initiative? Because that's usually also a question that the traditional agile coaches don't ask that much. So that's really cool. Remember, it's the organization that matures, not the Kanban method. And we can prevent the two failure modes here. So we've seen false plateaus. Oh, we have stickies on the wall. We're more happy now. We're totally fantastic. You know, like they're plateauing out, but you could do way more. Or, and that was a case one, overreaching. You know, trying too much at the same time and creating too much stress in the organization. So use it to take the right step at the right time. My personal learning points, you can apply the model visibly and in agreement with your clients or not. You can also use it just, you know, in your laptop or, you know, have a little cheat sheet and use it to, you know, when you come into a new organization or maybe new team, use it to scan the environment and to get an impression like, where am I at with this organization, and then deal appropriately. It's great for alignment with the coaches team and also with leadership teams or your sponsors in the organization. And it really puts the focus on outcomes. It helps you not get lost in the nitty-gritty details of Kanban and team happiness and whatever, but really like, what are the business outcomes? You know, how do we know we're more successful as a business? And that's what it's about. And lastly, that's the little health warning there, burgers and Coke. It's hard to unlearn. So for me, I noticed like it's, you know, I applied for 1.5 years now, and I have it like it gets into my intuitive thinking now. And, you know, wherever I go, I say like, oh, they're maturity level 1, or ooh, they're 0. And it really helps you to, I think, become a better coach and to get a better sense also for culture and appropriateness of certain things. All of this, my time is up. And thank you.
The great opportunities of large coffee breaks is we can slightly move our talks through the schedule. So, the questions? Okay.
Hi, my name is Sandra. Thank you for your talk. It was really wonderful. And I have a question about objections and obstacles you might have faced from the side from teams. Because we're trying to implement this model right now, and we would like to see, not from the part of the management, but on the part of the teams, how it works.
Yeah. So what we found, like with the teams, you have to be a bit careful, like with our management side, say, we will use the KMM now. So and they got the message like, oh no, we have to do it because management says it. So my tip would be like focus on the benefits the team could get. For instance, if they are at level 1, like overburdened, focus on like, hey, let's apply the model so we can coach you in a focused way to get out of this overburdening situation, for instance, or, you know, ask what are you dissatisfied with at the moment, and then use this as a motivation. Try to make it clear it's not, you know, to get this Kanban of the year model, or we need to get to model 2 to level 2 so that we're at level 2, but there's a reason behind this. Okay.
Yes, thank you for your report. Very interesting and very positive manner with a lot of laughing. Actually, I have 2 questions because I really want to receive a cup. Yes, and first, when in the table with KMM levels, you showed 3 colors.
Yeah.
What does the yellow mean?
So yellow means it's partly implemented, like in this cross team. So maybe some teams do this, or some of the leaders, but they're like starting, but it's not consistently there yet. But you're seeing some signs.
Okay, and if I know with my team in level 1, for example, and I want to move them to the next level, what should I do? Could you give me just a few steps? Maybe we should change the colors of stickers or something like that.
Change it all to purple. So that's what the transitioning practices. So you should start with the level 2 transitioning practices, which is usually, so when you're from 1 to 2, the difference is get out of the team bubble and get customer awareness. So, you know, point them to the customer wherever possible. Like ask them, say, who are you delivering your request to? Who accepts stuff, or who puts your requests in? And then, you know, make them look at the whole flow end to end, and start easy, just visualizing maybe in a really lightweight manner. That's I think general advice to level 2. And you could have a look at the transitioning practices. I think visualizing end-to-end flow is a good starting point. We can chat afterwards. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. My question is, am I right that you started with doing some kind of scoring for the start? And how frequent do you do scoring afterwards? And how elaborate is that scoring really for the teams?
Yeah. So I think for now we did it so in January 19, then in June, and we're doing it now. So I think I wouldn't do it more often than half a year, like at least with the company at that change speed. The effort, it's maybe a half a day or so. For me, it's like I'm at the organization anyway, so it's just like, okay, I'll keep a close eye on certain things and use it and go through things, and things I'm not sure, I ask people. So it's in that case not that much effort. Although we're now doing it on a team level, so we'll ask, every team has one coach assigned, so the coach will do it. But I think it's a few hours of work.
So it's much more of mentioning stuff than asking questions for you.
Yeah, for me, I used to be like also ITIL consultant type of person, but I didn't do any formal interviews or so. It's really observing, and then maybe could check the Jira boards. Do they have lanes for features, or are features invisible there? Do they have blockers? There are things. The general assessment is much based on evidence. You try to really find proof and not so talking to people and they tell you thing is the weakest source or the weakest kind of evidence. So usually the burden on the teams themselves is really not high, from my experience.
Hello. Firstly, danke schön, Susanne. It was an impressive talk, and yeah, I think all of us really enjoyed it. And a unique situation where we have the opportunity to kind of get in touch with the world-class experience of applying KMM. I was really excited about the first story you told, because my company now used to have similar challenges. So my question is, so we are all lucky after 2018 we have KMM now, and well, let's imagine the world where there is Kanban method, but there's not yet KMM developed. So what would you do differently to address the challenges in the first story if there was no KMM?
Good point. I think actually what we noticed, or what I noticed, that we had been overreaching. Also because two of the leaders there, they are also Kanban enthusiasts. They go to Lean Kanban, Central Europe, and so on. KMM really helped me to say, no more Kanban practices at this moment. We need to, we have other things to do first. And maybe we would have continued this way, and maybe we wouldn't be there where we are now at the moment. So I think, maybe the changes wouldn't be as focused as they are today.
All right. So you would do something similar, but less focused, with less, say, kind of vision where to move forward.
Yeah, I think so. Really, the alignment or direction would be missing.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the talk. During the speech, you said that Jira is not the right tool for the level 3, and you are doing something to cope this issue. Any sharing ideas what you are doing? Because I think that we are somewhere at the second level, and we also use Jira, and we have the same struggle, I think.
Yeah, struggle, right? Okay, Jira is always a big topic. Just for you that don't know, the core issues are visualization of your workflow. Usually, like this, you can't build a proper model of your workflow in Jira. You don't get real pull, because you don't have bracketed web limits, and don't get me into metrics, right? So that's Jira limitations. So at the moment they use Tableau. We have customers where they use paper, so wall boards in addition to Jira. Like if you have distributed teams, they could still have their board at the wall, a physical board, and then just have higher level boards in Jira, not with all the details. And there are real Kanban tools out there, like Kanbanize or Swift from Swift Digital, Swift Kanban. And so what we're doing there at the moment, we're using Kanbanize in the coaches team. And we'll just leave the laptop open wherever possible. And then people, I already got asked twice, like, oh, what's this? And I tell them, oh, it's a real Kanban tool. Because they immediately see the difference, right? So that's, we're trying to, so we started like an evaluation of Kanbanize also and Swift. And that's like the midterm plan. We'd like to get them onto another tool because their Jira is not tightly integrated into the development environment. So shouldn't be a big issue to switch other than Jira is the standard tool. And it says it's a Kanban tool, so you have to use it. Did this help?
Thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Thank you, Susanne, for the presentation. And I have one potentially very stupid question. How we can clearly identify at which Kanban maturity level the company is? Based on outcomes or probably based on the practices that are currently in use?
Usually we say you would start with the culture, get an impression where they are, so you could have a look like, are they predominantly communicating within the team? Do they have awareness of the customer, or are they working in silos? For instance, also like, are they okay with transparency, or are they still hiding stuff, which would mean they're rather level 0. So I would start with the culture. It gives you a rough orientation, and then you could check the Kanban practices quickly. So like if you find they're at level 1, you probably don't need to look for level 4 Kanban practices.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Давайте, Юля.
Thank you. My question is, you have started from maturity level 1 or from 0 maturity level? If from 0 maturity level, how long it took to reach first maturity level? Thank you.
Oh dear. So I think they were mostly at 1. So I think they were out of the individual fight. It's because 0 is really every individual tries to survive in the organization somehow. Okay. So there's no alignment whatsoever. So what they had really working teams and they were being transparent and so on. So they were at level 1. But maybe what's behind your question, I think getting from 0 to 1 might be the most difficult thing, the most difficult step, because it includes transparency, which is often something that threatens people. Like we had one case recently here where, people were really, they felt threatened, they didn't want to share what they're doing, because then it also usually becomes clear, like, who is doing a lot of work and maybe who is not. And maybe even if that's not the case, it's still a fear that people have. So I think the visualization alone can be really stressful in organizations, and you probably need good management support, or you need to provide some safety before you go there. And I would always start really lightweight, never ever do static with a level 0 organization, right? They would just look at, what? Just tell them, what are you doing at the moment? Let's put stickies on the wall, and then take it from there. Welcome.
Okay.
Thank you for your speech. It resonates with my situation at all very much. So you mentioned leadership team several times and active leadership. Can you please explain who is in your leadership? Is it management, volunteers from team, sponsors?
Yeah. Okay. So it's the team lead from the development, from the IT side, and the senior manager from the IT side, and from the business unit, the senior manager and the team lead. What we established like a few months ago was the delivery lead roles, like a flow manager, service delivery manager. That is really helpful. These are like people in the teams responsible for the flow in the teams, also at feature level. And they turned out to be really helpful also for coaching. And we're having more and more discussions with these. But more or less, it's really the senior management of the department.
So So you have some cadences meeting with this team.
With the leadership, you mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, every 1 or 2 months now. We meet with the coaches and them, and we reflect back what's going on and decide what to do next. Really helpful.
And the last part, who was doing act of leadership you mentioned on the?
Actually, some of those leaders, like the senior manager said, lead time is important, and you need to do this and that, and we want you to see a limit whip. And now, we're working with them to show also signaling, like, it's not enough at a certain point to say lead time is important. Maybe you also should go to the teams and ask them, when did you have a look? Did you review your finished items, and what did you learn, and what will you improve? Really get into context, and then so the what's next and so what, because we've seen it like now you have to measure lead time, and we were having discussions. Oh, weekends don't count. Of course, weekends count, and don't tune your numbers, right? That's not the point. The point is to get better and quicker delivery to the customer. So, and to avoid all these kinds of discussions, it's important to always highlight why are we doing this and what's the effect we want. And we're working on this with the leadership team also.
Thank you a lot.
I think this was the last question. So, difficult choice. Which question was awesome?
Please.
Yes.
Do I have to choose? No.
Yes, you need to choose. You need to choose. Everyone's one
We're
his
all
cap.
awesome. Can we just break it up and give the pieces now?
Yes, you can, but
So Solomon's decision, yeah?
What do we have? Help me, people. Number.
Number.
How many? I don't know. 3.
Number 3, I think it's Ekaterina. Or, no, Alec.
Okay.
Alec. So, this cup goes to Moscow. So, and the present for Susanne. Now you have in Russian. Okay, thank you. Yes, it's the Cyrillic spell. I thought that is pretty funny. Cyrillic spell of German name and German last name.